Good morning, everyone. Am I audible? Is my voice clear
Yes.
to everyone? Okay.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
good morning.
Morning. So I'm already a little late today. So let's begin the class. Go back and neck straight. Gently close the eyes and start watching your breath. Just allow yourself to relax and connect with the natural flow. As the breath enters your body and exits your body, just observe. Allow your mind to settle and come to your breath. Make sure that your face is relaxed, neck and shoulders are relaxed. And very slowly begin to deepen your breath. Go for slow, long, and deep inhalations, slow, long, and deep exhalations. And now let's begin with chanting Om. We'll be chanting Om 3 times, followed by 3 Shantis. Exhale completely and then inhale for Om. Shan, Shan, Shanti. Just feel the vibrations. Join both the palms together in front of the chest and rub both the palms together. Place them over the eyes and very slowly while blinking, and looking at the palms. Open up your eyes. Come back with a big smile. Namaste to everyone. So yesterday we didn't have our class, and the day before that I ended with the story. So the mythological origin of yoga. So as I was telling you, the fish was given a blessing and a curse both. So let me just give the names also with that story. So when Shivji gave that fish the blessing and the curse, so then she incarnated as Matsyendranath. Right? So he's a very famous yogi. If you Google his name, you will find various stories. Matsyendranath, and um he passed on, propagated yoga a lot, like especially Hatha Yoga. When we'll have a class on Hatha Yoga, I'll be discussing about the Nath cult. So he was a part of the Nath cult, and Nath cult is associated with the passing down of Hatha Yoga. And his very devoted disciple, Gorakhnath. He was the one like who studied a lot from him. And when Matsyendranath forgot his, you know, teaching when he needed it the most, that is when Gorakhnath stepped in, and he was the one who retaught Matsyendranath the knowledge of yoga. And so he became the teacher and Matsyendranath became the student. So the opposite thing happened when he forgot about the knowledge of yoga. So he was the one who got him out, like through this knowledge. Yeah. So he helped him throughout his journey. So then the Nath cult had its own like people who took it down from one generation to the other. So we will touch upon this in the Hatha Yoga class when we discuss Hatha Yoga, what it is, why Hatha Yoga, how did it come into existence. So today we are mostly going to discuss about the history and development of yoga. Okay. Today's topic of discussion is the history and development of yoga. So I do not think I have mentioned this before. But you're not learning something new. Okay, yoga is something which had already been there since like uh, the very beginning. Yoga was always there. It's something old that you are learning, that you're getting to know about. There is nothing new that is there when you learn about yoga, because everything, it's so holistic, everything was already covered in the study of yoga. Okay, so there's nothing new that we are understanding. We're just going back to our roots. When we study yoga, we are going back to our roots and trying to develop this understanding of who we are, what we are made up of, and what is our true nature, so that we can be more in sync with who we are. Yes, right now most people have lost track of their own previous, their roots basically. Most people have lost track of that. So when you come into the study of yoga, you're not only traditionally going back, like as per your own religion, it's not necessarily going back that way, but the entire essence of a human being and the entire purpose, like the main purpose of human life, that is how we are going back. Okay, when we go into the study of yoga, so it had always existed, but there was a particular point of time when it had existed normally in the day to day life of people. And after that, after a while, a need was felt to systematize it. Okay, so it was too scattered. So there was a point in the history, there was a time period where this entire study was systematized. Okay, and after that, now it is carried on. Yes. So depending on all of these timelines, so generally, historically speaking, we can you will whenever you read about yoga, you will come across a pre-classical period, then the classical period, and the post-classical period. So this is the main division. Okay. So I'm going to write it down in the chat box also. Pre-classical, we also call it the period that was before Patanjali. Okay, so pre-Patanjali, because he was the one who systematized you. Okay. This is your first period. Then second one is the Patanjali period, the classical period. And then we have the post Patanjali period or post classical period. So these are the three main divisions. In the post Patanjali period, we have the modern, like after a while, it was divided into the modern era. Okay, so from 700, let me give the timelines also. So pre-classical period, let me begin from the beginning. Pre-classical period has the timeline of before 500 BC. Okay, from 500 BC till 800 BC, we have, sorry, AD, we have the Patanjali period. And after the 800 AD, we have the post classical period. And the post classical period, so then as we come closer to the modern times, so from 700 BC, sorry, AD, from 1700 century to 1900 century is considered to be your modern era. Okay, and the one that we are currently in, post 1900s, is considered to be contemporary. Okay. So everything is written down in the chat box, you can note it down. Okay, so before Patanjali ji, like yoga, as I told you, was already there. So if you go back to the Indus Valley civilization, you will find a lot of carvings where people are sitting in meditative postures, and there are certain yoga postures that are over there, like depicted in the carvings. When you go back, like historically, check those things. So certain postures are there which make it very evident that yoga was being practiced even by people who lived during that time. Yes. And even like, so if I go back to the oldest written form for yoga, if I say like for Indian tradition also, the oldest written form was the Vedas for us. one of the oldest scriptures are considered to be Vedas. Okay. So in the Vedas, even though yoga was never directly mentioned, but the term yoga wasn't directly mentioned, but the practices of asana, pranayam, mudras, meditation, all of these practices were mentioned in the Vedas also. So see, before that time, before Patanjali's time, the information was there because there were texts. But once again, there was no direct mention and everything was scattered. Okay. So the various Vedas, you will find the mention of different things in a scattered way. So first source before it was systematized was Vedas. If you were looking for a practice like yoga, people consulted, read the Vedas, and then they tried to implement those practices. Okay. Then there was another text, the compilation of other texts. So Upanishads. These are considered to be, I can say, the essence of the Vedas was captured in the Upanishads. Okay. And Upanishads are mostly in story format, so they're very interesting to read. If you ever get time, you can go ahead, read certain Upanishads. And a lot of concepts of yoga were also explained in the Upanishads, like the mention of Om is seen in a few Upanishads. Then we can also find the mention of the Panchakoshas, or the five sheets of the human body that we discussed in the pranayam class. That is also found in the Upanishad. So see, a lot of concepts related to yoga were scattered already. They were present over there. Okay. Then the main practices before Patanjali were like people followed Buddhist practices, and Jainism. Jainism was also present. So mostly the path given in these two schools of thoughts were followed before everything was systematized. Also, two very major epics that we have over here, Mahabharat and Ramayana. Okay? Ramayana and Mahabharat. So Ramayana, Ramayana, and Mahabharat is Mahabharat. So Ramayana and Mahabharat. So Bhagavad Gita is a part of the Mahabharat epic. We will also be discussing Bhagavad Gita. So all of these things were prevalent before yoga was systematized, and people were mostly consulting these texts. There are other texts also. We will not go very much in detail, but main practices I have mentioned over here, like main sources and main practices that were going on before Patanjali ji came in and he systematized everything. So what was happening right now was in the Vedas also, when you read, so certain things contradicted with each other. Okay. So what Patanjali ji did was basically he compiled everything and he gave the Ashtang Yoga. So he said that forget everything, just follow this path, and this, when you read Ashtang Yoga, there is no contradiction. Okay, in Ashtang Yoga. So he basically ended all the contradictions that existed before his time period, so that a common person, a common man could adopt yoga. He would not get lost in the rites, rituals of yoga, but instead he would just be able to simply adopt the practice of yoga and implement it in his or her life, and then reach the final goal. Okay, so there are multiple ways of reaching the final goal. And in the Vedas, you will also find a very strong mention of Karma Kand. Okay, so Karma Kand is basically the rites and rituals that we follow. Okay, here in India, we have a lot of rites and rituals that are present. So those, all of those things were basically mentioned in the Vedas. So what happened was people had their own interpretation also. So one thing is there is a text, and the other thing is we interpret it. So it was causing a lot of contradiction, and as a result of that, people got stuck in that. Instead of practicing, they got stuck in which is right, which is wrong. So that basically did not help them to move ahead in their practice of yoga. Okay. So then the time of Patanjali ji came. Okay. So then he came in and he wrote the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Okay. You'll have a separate class on this also. But for now, you need to know about this text. So Patanjal, Patanjal Yoga, Yoga, and Sutra, Sutra. So he came in and he was like, okay, fine, let me systematize it, let me make it easier for people to adopt these practices. Okay. So in his text, he has given, he understood that students fell into three categories. Okay. One was an advanced level student. So he gave practices for the advanced level student. Then there were practices given for an intermediate level student. Okay. And then he gave the practice for a beginner level student. So his main focus was Raj Yoga. We will also study about this school of thought. Okay. So Raj Yoga mostly focuses on the mind and its ability to attain moksha. Okay. So through the powers of the mind, through the concentration of the mind, if you work on this instrument called mind, then you will be able to attain moksha. So main focus is on meditation. When you study about Raj Yoga, when we'll have that class, you will see that the main focus of that school of thought is enhancing the power of the mind so that you can perceive something you cannot perceive through the senses. This we discussed when we were doing darshan also, that to we want to perceive something which cannot be perceived through the senses. So sharpening of the mind is very important when we come to the practices of Raj Yoga. So his main emphasis, even the posture that he described, so the mention of asana in Ashtanga Yoga, even that is for meditative purposes. So generally the Ashtang Vinyas Yoga, Hatha Yoga, all of these practices, when asana is described, there are certain names of asanas that are given in that, and then you perform those postures, you hold in those postures, or you just move from one posture to the other. But when even when you read in Vedas, you will see when asana has been described as a posture in which you can sit for a long period of time so that your meditation is supported. So main focus over there was also meditation only. In the Vedas also, meditation posture was given in terms of meditation only. Okay. So he described the eight limbs, how a beginner can start from the beginning, start from the very scratch, and reach the final goal. He or she doesn't have to go anywhere else, consult any other school of thought, if you are able to stick to the practices. So when we will discuss Ashtanga Yoga, we will do that in detail. You will understand the step by step process of what is happening and why he placed everything in this format only. Okay. So he could have done like maybe yamas and niyamas later on, before starting the asana practice, but he said that no, first you need to go ahead, practice yam niyam, or the rules. There are certain rules that he gave which were called yamas and niyamas. So as per him, first those should be practiced and then you can step into the higher level practices of yoga. Okay. So when he came in, he is also Maharishi Patanjali. He is also called the father of classical yoga. Okay. I've written his name in the chat box also. Maharishi Patanjali, Maharishi, Maharishi, and Patanjali is Patanjali. So from the period where nothing was systematized but was still being practiced to the period where now everything was systematized, the text has a total of 195 sutras. Okay. Total of 195 sutras are there. And the entire practice of yoga, what will happen when you practice this, what are the various checkpoints, how are you moving ahead in your sadhana, and what is the final goal, why you are doing this, what is the point that you have to experience. Everything has been discussed in detail by him. And this is one of the shortest texts you will find on yoga. Okay, so you guys can go ahead and read this also. It's a pretty like insightful book, and it takes a very long time to digest what he has said and actually understand what he was trying to say. So he gave the text as per the understanding the development of the people at that point of time. Okay, but now as the uh, times have moved forward and we are mostly disconnected with the spiritual practices in this time in the modern era. So uh, mostly for us it's basically harder to understand what he was trying to say, so you will find a lot of commentaries on the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. So multiple, when you search for this text you will find multiple translations by a lot of gurus, and they have given their own interpretation because it was given by him in a coded form basically. So he gave a very precise text but it was in coded language. So as we developed, as we moved ahead, so that coded language now we are interpreting it as per our own understanding. So very famous gurus or yoga schools have given their interpretation on the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. And from every interpretation, you will understand something new only about the same sutra. Okay. So if you actually see the sutras, they are this thin a book. They will fit in this thin a book. But because there are so many interpretations, you will find books that are this thick also. Because they're trying to understand what he was trying to say, basically. Okay. So then from this classical period, we move to the post classical period, where now Raj Yoga was starting to go away, basically. Okay, so earlier also meditation was a very strong part in the pre classical period. In the classical period, it was all compiled, and still the main focus was on Raj Yoga. But as we moved ahead, so with the changing times, as people moved ahead, they believed more in the physical practices. Okay, so whatever the body as an instrument can do, how you can move your body to attain various states of the mind. So main focus shifted to Hatha Yoga. Okay. So Hatha Yoga, Tantra Yoga, these were the practices that came more into existence like after Patanjali's time. So before that, there was still a lot of emphasis on meditation. But these days also, if you see in the contemporary times also, main focus when you hear the word yoga, because yoga is more prevalent, like we call it yoga these days, but actually it is yoga. So when you listen to this word, mostly the first picture that people have is the practice of asana and pranayama. Okay, maximum if somebody is like actually following yoga, then they will see the practice of pranayama also. but no one goes ahead from pranayam. So the holistic practice was lost. Okay, working on all the levels was somewhere lost, and only the physical practices, the ones that were able to, keep your body fit. So earlier yoga was the origination of yoga was there because people saw that physically we are not doing okay, for that we also have ayurveda. Okay, so to keep our body fit we have the practices of ayurveda, but then also it was seen that the mind had its own tendency to waver, and that was causing a lot of suffering. So yoga came into existence because mental issues, the emotional things that we go through, we need some practices to balance that out, but we didn't have that. So yoga goes very deep, but eventually the essence was lost and mostly physical fitness became the aim, to keep your body physically fit. Why? Because you wanted to enhance your lifespan. Okay, so it didn't happen just like this. With time, people were mostly working on enhancing their lifespan. Okay, so the other practices slowly started to fade away. Okay, and one more thing was seen, like Hatha Yoga, like the school of Hatha Yoga specifically believes that yamas and niyamas require a level of mental strength. So you cannot follow the rules and regulations just like that, because they are very, like I would say, for some people it's very tough. For most people it is very tough because yamas and niyamas were given way back. Okay. And right now, like I will tell you one of those, like speaking the truth. So it's very difficult for us to always speak the truth because you cannot get a lot of things done in life if you are always speaking the truth. Yeah, in the modern times at least, you cannot get everything done if you're solely speaking the truth. Sometimes it will not work in your favor. That is when people started lying. Okay, so earlier the times were very different. It was easier to reach that level of attaining mastery in speaking the truth, but now it has become very difficult. Yes, so in Hatha Yoga, they mainly removed the part of yama and niyama, and they believe that after the person has developed the physical strength and worked on pranayam, worked on all of these things, that is when the person will gain the mental strength to stick to yamas and niyamas. And when they have that strength to stick to yamas and niyamas, that is when they should follow it. They shouldn't force that thing, which is actually a very, I would say, thoughtful thing that they have done, because it is actually very hard for us to speak the truth, or for us to be in a state where we are not violent. Okay, so because all of these concepts go very deep, so earlier students were chosen on the basis of this only. So in earlier times what happened was, the guru, when the student came to the guru generally used to give the student a task for minimum 2 3 years, and he used to say, follow this. After that, you will become capable of receiving this knowledge. Yes, but in modern times, we just pay the fee and we are able to access the knowledge of yoga. So times have also changed. Now yoga is seen very differently. So you can access that information right now at any point of time. With COVID times, everything going online, you can still access you. But earlier this was not the case. The guru first checked the capability of the student. Are you capable of receiving what I'm trying to give you? And used to give them multiple tasks and see if the student is actually capable of doing it. And allowed him to stay with him, and then he gave the knowledge. Yes, so times have really changed. So as per the timing, the practices also changed. So mostly Hatha Yoga became very prevalent during this time. Okay, Hatha Yoga, Asan, Pranayams, these are things that are practiced in the modern times. Okay, so a lot of interpretations on major texts were also given in the post classical period. So Adi Shankaracharya, he compiled Bhagavad Gita and the Vedanta, everything related to Vedanta he gave. So all of these things were given by them. Okay. So any doubts so far? First, let me stop and ask you, is there something that you missed or any doubts in whatever we have discussed? Mostly discussing history only. So, yeah, these are facts and figures that we have. But still, anything that you missed upon, like you can just like unmute yourself, ask me, or any doubts.
Like when did yoga come to the Western world? Like when did yoga come to the Western world?
Hmm. So, in the Western world, it came very later. Okay. So, when modern gurus came in, they were the ones who mostly took yoga to the Western world. So, like gurus like P. Krishnamacharya, who was the founder of Vinyas Yoga. So, Vinyas Yoga was mostly developed according to the Western climate and culture. Okay, so the yoga that we practice over here, Hatha Yoga, the main foundational practices for all type of physical yoga that you are right now seeing, like yin yoga and ashtang vinyas, vinyas yoga. So all of these have the basis in Hatha Yoga. And Hatha Yoga is a practice that was developed according to the climate of India. Okay, but everywhere this could not be practiced. Okay, so for you guys, like for example, over here we have a lot of like summers are very tough on us. Yes, so we sweat very easily. So for us practicing Hatha Yoga, just holding in that posture will release the toxins from our body. That will be enough. But when you go to the Western world, like to your side, when you shift to the side of your shift to your side of the world, that is where the temperatures, like there's a lot of cold. Yeah, winters are very tough on you guys. Over here it's still okay. Winters are tough, but for you guys it's very tough. So you will require more physical practice to release the same amount of sweat from the body. So that is when these styles came into existence, like Vinyas Yoga, Ashtang Vinyas Yoga, where the practice is in flow and it's very rigorous in nature, so that you sweat a lot to release those toxins. So the modern gurus were the ones. Osho was very prevalent at one point of time. These were the people who pushed yoga in the Western world a lot. Okay, so earlier maybe there was yoga in your like area as well, but it wasn't that prominently pushed. It was after such gurus came in who encouraged these practices. That is when you saw a flourishment of yoga in your culture, like, and now it's like spread throughout the world.
Thank
So
you
I
very much.
yeah. So yeah, these practices are very like, there is a reason why these practices developed. Okay, one question in the chat box. Hmm. Yes, in Hatha Yoga, they do not reduce the importance of yamas and niyamas, but they change the placement of yamas and niyamas. Okay, so if you go into Patanjali Yoga Sutra, the first two steps in Ashtanga Yoga are yama, niyama. Then you go to asana, then you go to pranayam, and like that, there are 8 limbs. But Hatha Yoga started from asana. Okay, so they believed that the yamas and niyamas, they generated a lot of guilt in people. So suppose that let me take this same example, lying and saying the truth. So what started happening was, after a while people weren't able to, like, everything, their circumstances did not support saying the truth. Okay, so every time they used to lie or feel that they have lied or been untruthful in some way, they were generating a lot of guilt inside. So when that guilt was generated inside, their practice used to stop. Okay, so in modern times they realized that yamas and niyamas could not become the starting point. of the yogic practice. They will come later on when you develop that kind of mental strength, where if you're faced with a situation, then you can exercise that mental strength and choose to tell the truth despite it not being favorable for you. Okay, so most of the times this happens, and because we want things to be favorable, we have to lie. It's common. There's nothing to feel bad about. Like, it's very normal. Like, we have to. It's the way in which we survive in this world. Okay, you can't always tell the truth. But that was generating a lot of guilt in the students. So they said that rather than placing them as the first two steps, let us move them to a point where after you have worked on your body, because asana also develops a lot of willpower, holding in the asana or at least completing one class of asana also, after that you have to develop a lot of mental strength to even complete that class. And you will feel that also, like after a while, when your strength begins to develop, at that point also you require a lot of willpower to, complete the class, to follow in the class. So with asana, pranayam, mudras, your mental strength develops with these practices. So once you reach that stage where you are ready, that is when yamas and niyamas are cued in to your yogic practice. That's the only difference. Okay, great. Okay. So we were in the post-classical period. Yeah. So in the post-classical period, then we have the modern era. So 1700 to 1900 in this century is considered to be the modern era. Okay. So over here, very prominent gurus like Swami Vivekanand, Ramakrishna Paramahans, these yogis came in and they gave their own interpretations, their own understanding on different concepts of yoga. So Aurobindo, Sri Aurobindo, he gave his own integral yoga. Yes, and Swami Vivekanand also wrote on Raj Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga. So you will find his books also, like proper. He has written on all schools of yoga. He has written his own interpretation of what that means. So these yogis came in and they gave their understanding of these things. Okay, so this is in the modern era. And then we come to the contemporary times where yogis like Osho, so Yogi Rajneesh ji, his name was Rajneesh. So he and Sri Ravi Shankar, Jitendra Brahmachari ji, and all of these Patabai Joyce, BKS Iyengar, all of these gurus came and gave their own styles of yoga. So Iyengar Yoga is also very famous. That's a different style of yoga. Then we have the Pattabhai Joyce gave Ashtang Vinyas Yoga. T. Krishnamacharya gave Vinyas Yoga. You have practiced both these styles. Yes, you have one Vinyasa class, you have Ashtang Vinyas classes. So these gurus came in and they recognized this is the need of the hour. So this is how we have to change the practices. So they practice the original techniques, and once they had understood those techniques deeply, that is when they introduce the modifications according to the current time. So not everyone is like eligible to introduce modifications in yoga. Okay, because the modification, when it comes in, you need to understand on what level it is working. Okay, so suppose if I give a modification of a particular asana or a particular pranayam, so what will happen is there is some way in which I am changing the entire energetic way in which it's impacting you. So if I don't understand the impact of the original practice in depth, then I cannot change it and give you a different practice. Okay, I'm not capable, we are not capable of introducing the variations. It is only gurus who have experienced the original technique, understood them, then practice the variation, understood it deeply, that is when the variation is introduced. Okay, so if you go to that guru and you will ask that guru what is the difference between the original practice and the variation you have introduced, that person will be actually able to tell you what the difference is. where the difference is coming, what is happening to you in the original practice, in the variation practice, and which one is more beneficial for you depending on your capability. Okay, so variations generally just follow the variations which are given by these gurus. Don't follow any variation that comes in, because in the modern times a lot of variations are coming in which have no actual basis. So I'll give you an example. Recently I interacted with a few students and I saw that for Anulom Vilom Pranayam, what was happening was, this is the mudra that we generally adopt. So I fold the first two fingers and place them on the root of the thumb, and the rest two fingers are together. So they are together, and this is how the hand goes in. But one student, one or two students showed me a very different practice. They were like, that this is the practice. So this is also one of the mudras. When I will take your class, pranayam class, I will tell you about the two mudras that you adopt. So the other student told me that this is the mudra they were adopting. So last two fingers are folded. This is placed on the eyebrow center, and this is how you close the nostril. So with this part, you are closing the nostril. Okay, so this and in the original technique the hand is open, so first two fingers are placed over here and this, so this and this. So I don't know where this variation came from. I think it was more like convenient for people to close and open the nostril when the fingers are folded, but this is not a mudra. Okay, this is not a mudra. This is a mudra. This is called the Vishnu mudra. This is a mudra. You will find the mention of this mudra in various texts. So this variation that has come in has no basis. Basically, I haven't come across any text in which this mudra is given. Okay, so far I haven't. So these variations that come in, they make you lose the purity of the technique, because mudras have their own basis of being formed in a particular way. So if somebody is practicing this and somebody is practicing this, the benefits will be very different. Both the benefits will be very different. And this also has to be a mudra for you to be able to practice it in this manner. So be very mindful whenever you're going for variations. Make sure you have a proper source. Okay, because right now a lot of differences are going on from the main technique. A lot of changes are going on, so be very mindful. If you have a good source behind it, yes, then you can go ahead adopt that thing. But if you don't have a good source behind it, or if your teacher does not have the right source behind it, then it will become very problematic for you, because it works on a very subtle level. These things work on very subtle levels, so you will not recognize, but they will have an impact on your entire system. Okay, so be very mindful when you are doing this. Okay, so with this, we have finished with the history, the development of yoga with the passing time. Any doubts in any of what I have, anything that I have said? Okay, so can I assume that everyone understood? Yeah. Okay, so you can go ahead, read up about this over the internet also. Even in the manual that you're provided, this information is given. So you can go ahead, uh, uh, read about this after today's class ends, after your Ayurveda anatomy classes end. If you find some time, you can read about this. There are videos also that you will be able to find to make it more interesting for you. So that is how you can work on this topic, because again, it's history, so I cannot change it. It's just the way it is. How do you access the manual? Okay, so the manual should have been sent to you um, with the login ID password. Like mostly we send it along with that only. So uh, let me talk to the management over here, and they will they will send it across, like if you don't have the manual. So if you could let me know, everyone over here has the manual, has the access to the manual, or it's only you who didn't receive the manual yet?
I have it. It came, like you said, with an introductory letter and login details, etc.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Rupa ji, I think you don't have it. So I'll talk to the management and I'll make sure that they send it to you. Okay.
I don't think I've got it either, actually.
Wait, can you? I did not see who. Monica ji. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So okay. I have two names, Rupa ji, Monica ji. I will talk to the management and send it across. In case you don't get it, just on the query, when you go on our page, there is a query chat over there, so you can leave a message over there so that I have your email ID. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So whoever does not have it, just send your email ID. I'll forward it to the management. They're going to forward it to you. Okay. Okay. So let's end today's session then. So back and neck straight. Gently close the eyes. And take a few moments. Allow all of this information to seep in. We'll chant Om one time, followed by 3 Shanti. Exhale completely and inhale for Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Feel the vibration. Join both the palms together in front of the chest and bow down. That you are grateful for. Say a mental thank you. And rub both the palms together. Taste them over the eyes. Very slowly while blinking. And looking at your palms, open up your eyes. Come back with a big, big smile. And namaste to everyone. I will see you in the evening for your pranayam class. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye bye. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.